To TVB News. Hong Kong independence advocate Andy Chan has made another controversial move after his recent speech at the Foreign Correspondents Club. In an open letter to U.S. President Donald Trump, Chan has called for the revocation of Hong Kong's World Trade Organization membership as well as that of China's. More from Caleb Loon.
Yet another controversial move by Hong Kong independence advocate Andy Chan. The convener of the Hong Kong National Party issued an open letter to the U.S. president calling for the revocation of Hong Kong's WTO membership as well as China's membership. His reason is Hong Kong has already entirely lost its autonomy. Chan also asked Donald Trump to stop treating Hong Kong separately from the mainland in matters concerning trade as stipulated in the United States Hong Kong Policy Act. A government spokesman said any person or group that aims to damage Hong Kong's interests should be condemned. Senior Counsel and Executive Council member Ronnie Tong said Chan's recent comments may have provoked Beijing into urging the SAR to speed up its legislation on national security. But Tong said even new laws under Article 23 of the Basic Law may not warrant putting Chan in jail.
Under the previous draft of the Article 23 legislation proposed in 2003, people would only be jailed if the speech involves violence or involves promoting violence.
Executive Council convener Bernard Chan also commented on Andy Chan's recent comments, calling them as foolish and unnecessary. He described such comments as Andy Chan's way to strive for exposure. Caleb Loon, TVB News.
The number of cases of locally contracted dengue fever has now risen to 15. As Kana Chu reports, a majority of the patients live in Wong Tai Sin.
The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department carried on with its mosquito control effort in Wong Tai Sin, where 3 of yesterday's 4 newly confirmed dengue fever patients live. One of them is a resident of Chuk Yuen North Estate, prompting disinfection work there as well.
We have immediate measures to implement the eradication. We have a special protocol in place to intensify the mosquito eradication. And on the other hand, we have also implemented the all-out intensive program for all districts.
Some lawmakers say more should be done.
The hygiene bureau should have more support, should have more resources in different districts to provide more information, especially information to the local people, to let them know how to protect themselves.
This lady, a resident of Chuk Yuen North Estate, claims to have witnessed Asian tiger mosquitoes, a species known to spread dengue fever. With the new school year fast approaching, this primary school in the district is taking measures to minimize risks. The headmaster said they will fortify anti-mosquito facilities and allow students to dress in long-sleeved clothing. Of the 15 people who were diagnosed with dengue fever, 13 had visited the Lion Rock Park. From Friday, the government has closed the park for 30 days. This, however, has hardly put off hikers.
So I wear the bug spray. It has DEET in it, so the mosquitoes, they don't particularly like it.
According to government statistics, the monthly OV-trap indices for Asian tiger mosquitoes in Wong Tai Sin in the past 3 months have exceeded the 20% alert level. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Another needle has been discovered on the seat of a public bus. According to the Kowloon Motor Bus Company, a passenger discovered a needle on one of the lower deck seats at around 2 p.m. yesterday. The Route 38 bus, which travels from Kwai Shing to Ping Ting Estate in Lam Tin, was in Kwun Tong when the driver was informed. Police say the needle was around 4 centimeters long. No one was injured. KMB says it condemns the act and has filed a police report. In India, aid efforts have increased to help the flood-ravaged state of Kerala At least 190 have been killed by the worst flooding in a century. Helicopters dropped medicine and food to needy recipients below. Torrential rain bombarded the area for more than 10 days. More than 300,000 people have been forced to flee their homes because of the rising waters. Authorities fear diseases could spread in cramped relief camps. More than 1,000 people have died in 7 Indian states since the start of the monsoon season 3 months ago.
After being separated for decades by the Korean War, some families on the Korean Peninsula will be given a chance to reunite starting tomorrow. This was a scene in Paju, South Korea, where thousands have registered for a chance to be chosen. The week-long get-together will take place in the North Korean resort of Mount Kumgang. Each separated family will be given 3 days to reunite. It's the first of its kind since 2015. Escalating tensions between the two sides halted the reunions. Thousands of families were separated during the Korean War. Pictures and memories are all they have of their relatives. 93 people from the South and 88 others from the North have been selected for this get-together. Leaders from around the globe are reacting to the death of former United Nations Chief Kofi Annan. Tributes are pouring in for the man they laud as being the moral voice of the world. The United Nations headquarters lowered its flag to half-staff the moment employees were told Kofi Annan, the man they praise as their irreplaceable role model, died yesterday in Switzerland.
Across the world, he was involved in the Syrian peace talks. He was involved in the situation of the Rohingya in Myanmar, where he tried to advise Aung San Suu Kyi on the way forward. So really, and the epitome of grace, always courageous, always direct, but never discourteous.
We have lost the moral voice of the world today. Mr. Annan was the UN in many ways. The 10 years he was Secretary General, he changed both substance and the way that we work. He will be remembered for the fact that he brought human rights into the mainstream of what we do.
Giving priority to human rights issues is exactly why Annan and the UN were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. Being the first Black African to become UN Secretary General, people across Africa celebrated Annan for always supporting their causes.
We were filled with pride to see an African leader dealing with world problems and finding solutions for them. So we dip our heads to him in great memory of him, and we will remember him fondly, but he has left a legacy of peacemaking in the world.
World leaders admit Annan truly inspired them. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he sincerely admired how Annan used wisdom and courage to make balanced decisions in the most difficult situations. Former U.S. President George W. Bush said Annan's voice of experience will be missed around the world. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife, former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, commended Annan for fighting against AIDS and protecting civilians in conflict zones. German Chancellor Angela Merkel complimented Annan for inspiring the youth to never give up working for the good of the world. After serving 2 terms as UN Secretary General, the tireless Annan humbly left with a sense of accomplishment.
I depart convinced that today's United Nations does more than ever before. It does it better than ever before. Yet, our work is far from complete.
Welcome back to TVB News. In Italy, the death toll from that bridge collapse now stands at...
今期流行教室今期落啲咩今期齊人全城衝擊流行，所有滿身好興奮，越照越強。
43. Autostrad, the company that operated the structure, has pledged to help rebuild the span and set aside funds to help in the recovery effort. But as Peter Coveas tells us, the company has stopped short of apologizing for the disaster.
Autostrad is the company that operated the roadway. Its CEO offered condolences to the families of the victims, but failed to offer an apology for the accident.
I would say that apologies and responsibilities are things that, are interconnected, of course. You apologize if you feel you are responsible for. And as I said before, I believe that the technical situation is so complex that is up to justice to understand what happened.
Autostrad said it'll set aside 500 million euros for disaster recovery. That includes funding for a new bridge and to help the bereaved families. The press conference came on the same day of a mass funeral service. The names of 19 victims were read out.
Andrea, Angela, Antonio.
Some families boycotted the service as a protest to authorities, accusing them of negligence. This man says mistakes keep occurring and people keep paying for the mistakes of others. He thinks it is time to say enough is enough and to think about what is really crucial, which is maintenance. Among those in attendance at the service was Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. His government is investigating why the 51-year-old bridge collapsed. Autostrad has been given 15 days by the Transport Ministry to show it met its obligations for maintaining the crossing. Otherwise, Autostrad would be considered in breach of contract. Currently, the company looks after more than 3,000 kilometers of roadways in Italy. Peter Coveas, TVB News.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Russian President Vladimir Putin held bilateral talks on Saturday. The two met at the Meseberg Palace near Berlin. While no agreements were made, the duo discussed conflicts in Ukraine and Syria and the nuclear deal with Iran. They also talked about a gas pipeline project Russia is doing, despite criticism from the U.S. and some European countries. They fear it could increase Europe's energy dependence on Russia. And before going to Berlin, Putin headed to Austria, where he danced at the wedding of the country's foreign minister. An opposition lawmaker criticized the decision to invite Putin, given Austria's role as a neutral intermediary in the conflict in eastern Ukraine.
The State Council today announced the details for Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan people living on the mainland to apply for their residence permits. But as Caleb Loon reports, resident permits obtained under the scheme may be revoked if the holders pose a threat to national sovereignty.
Earlier, Beijing announced that people from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan living on the mainland will be able to apply for their residence permits. More details were announced today. The permits will be issued by public security authorities at the county level based on where the applicant lives on the mainland. For those under the age of 16, their guardians can hand in applications on their behalf. Required documents include proof of address, such as property rental or purchase contracts. Proof of occupation, such as employment certificate or student card, is also necessary. The new permit will be valid for 5 years. It will display the holder's information, such as the residential address and fingerprint. Permit holders from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan will have different card codes. Successful applicants will be granted the right to employment and the right to participate in the Social Security Scheme and Housing Provident Fund. The permit will also enable them to enjoy convenience in taking domestic flights and trains, as well as registering for bank services. However, the residence permit could be revoked under certain circumstances, such as the holder's exit and entry permits being cancelled or posing a threat to national sovereignty and safety. Tam Yu Chung, a member of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, says revoking the permits of those who endanger national security is reasonable. but he says ordinary people wouldn't have to worry much about it. The new residence permits will be issued within 20 working days of the submission of the applications, but those who live in remote areas will take longer time, but less than 30 working days. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
In a statement issued today, the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority insists it did deliver the notice of termination to Sinkong Construction, Chong Construction that is, by hand yesterday. This is the parent company of Sinchong, called the termination incorrect yesterday evening, noting it hadn't received any notification of termination. A board member of the authority says the decision to terminate Sinchong Construction's contract as M+ Museum's main constructor was right.
That was the right decision, that's for sure. Will probably cause some delay to the construction, hence the completion of the project. The situation today gives us really no choice but to end this relationship in order for us to go through another tender for a new contractor to complete the project for us.
It may not be politically correct in some places, but in Taiwan, eating ice cream that looks exactly like puppies is all the rave. Yes, these frozen Shar-Pei pups are on the menu. And yes, everyday happy customers snap up pics of themselves gobbling down the puppies limb by limb. Many admit it's a bittersweet experience. While the treats taste so good, they feel sorry for the doggies at the same time. The lifelike creatures are made of chocolate, milk tea, or peanut flavors. Each takes about 5 hours to make and cost about $3.5 US. That is a sweet wrap of our news.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.